Hello and welcome to the Conducting Yourself Throughout and After the Interview section of the Success program. In this video, I'll be walking you through how to conduct yourself throughout the interview and what you should do afterwards. Some basic tips on interviewing are to be prepared to talk about yourself and your experiences, remain positive, enthusiastic, poised, and confident throughout the entire process, avoid filler words because they can be distracting to the interviewer, avoid indecisive phrases that could put a seed of doubt in the interviewer's mind of your ability to do the job correctly or efficiently. If you do not understand or hear a question, ask the interviewer to repeat or clarify. Maintain eye contact with the interviewers, and if you're conducting a virtual interview, maintain eye contact with the webcam and avoid reading off of something out of sight from the webcam, such as something on your desk or on another monitor if you have two, because it can be quite obvious with where your eyes are looking and with the tone of your voice. As mentioned before, you will be asked to talk about yourself and your experiences, so it is important to think about what you may be asked before your interview. Some common interview questions that employers will start with are listed on this slide. They include, tell us about yourself, what are your strengths, what is your biggest weakness, what are your short-term and long-term goals, why should I hire you, and why do you want to work for us? Before going into an interview, make sure you've prepared an answer and response to each of these questions. Once you and the employer have broken the ice at the beginning of the interview, they may go into behavioral-based questions. These types of questions often help the employer to understand your past performance in situations, which is the best predictor and indicator of future performance. Even if you have not faced a particular situation before, you always want to explain how you would react and go about handling it, instead of saying you don't know because you have never been in that situation before. Behavioral job interview techniques are used by all types of companies and employers. Unlike traditional job interview questions that ask you to describe what you did in a role or to share qualifications, these questions seek concrete examples of skills and experiences that relate directly to the position. Behavioral questions are designed to learn how you would respond to a specific workplace situation and how you would solve problems to achieve a successful outcome. Behavioral interview questions are generally formatted by presenting a situation, inquiring about what action you have taken to respond to something similar in the past, and what the result was. The interviewer will ask how you handled a situation, and you will need to respond with an explanation of what you did. The logic is that your success in the past is a positive indicator of your success in the future. Some examples of behavioral-based questions are, tell me about how you worked effectively under pressure. How do you handle a challenge? Give an example. Have you ever made a mistake? How did you handle it? Give an example of how you set goals. Give an example of a goal you reached and tell me how you achieved it. Describe a decision you made that wasn't popular and explain how you handled implementing it. Give an example of how you worked on a team. What do you do if you disagree with someone at work? Share an example of how you were able to motivate employees or coworkers. Have you handled difficult situation and how? SOAR and STAR are helpful methods to keep in mind when preparing for an interview, and one you can use throughout as well. They literally stand for Situation, Obstacle, Action, Result, or STAR, which is Situation, Task, Action, Result. You can use these methods by applying them to your answer to a behavioral-based question, and they help you organize your thoughts and details into a cohesive story. Details are extremely important in an interview, and SOAR and STAR are helpful at bringing out all the necessary details you need to include in your response to a behavioral-based question or any other interview question that you may be asked. Here's an example of how you can use STAR or SOAR. If you're being considered for a high-stress job, the interviewer will want to know how well you can work under pressure, and you want to give a real example of how you've dealt with that pressure when you respond. So, for example, tell me about how you worked effectively under pressure. I've been working on a key project that was scheduled for delivery to the client in 60 days. So in STAR or SOAR, this would be the situation of your experience or your situation. My supervisor came to me and said that we needed to speed it up and be ready in 45 days. while keeping our other projects on time. So this is the example of an obstacle or the task in STAR and SOAR. I made it into a challenge for my staff, and we effectively added just a few hours to each of our schedules and got the job done in 42 days by sharing the workload. So this is the example of the action in both STAR and SOAR that you took in your situation. Of course, I had a great group of people to work with, but I think that my effective allocation of tasks was a major component that contributed to the success of the project. And of course, that is the result of your experience and the last point of STAR or SOAR. So in this example, you can really see how it all comes together into a very nice, detailed, cohesive response, almost in a storyteller method as well. At the end of the interviewer will most likely ask if you have any questions for them, and this can be regarding, the interviewers themselves, the company, the organization, or the job position itself. And some questions you can ask include, if I'm hired, what would be my first project? What do you like best about working for this organization? What type of growth and advancement opportunities does this position in the company offer? How would you describe this company's culture? You don't want to ask anything about salary, benefits, vacation, or sick time, because it might just seem like you're interested in the perks and benefits of the job versus the actual job itself. So the questions you want to ask should be based upon the job duties and responsibilities, or the description, or questions regarding the interviewers themselves, or questions regarding the company and their virtues, mission, goals, etc. So after the interview, you want to be sure to send a thank you email to everyone in your interview. So say you have 4 to 5 people in your interview, you don't want to just send it to the director in that interview, but you want to send it to each individual person. So make sure that you get everyone's personal email address and send a thank you email to each of them. And failure to follow up with a thank you email could mean no job, because they are taking time out of their busy schedule to interview you for the position, so you really want to seem grateful and enthusiastic about the opportunity and just to be very thankful to them for having you there. So some tips I have for writing a thank you letter is simply to keep it to 3 paragraphs. It needs to be short, sweet, and brief. Doesn't need to be a huge document. And you want to make sure you proofread it carefully, because of course this is an example of your written communication skills. You also want to be specific, so include information that really stood out to you in the interview, or information that seemed to go over well with the interviewer. For example, if you were describing a project that you would worked on in a previous position or company, and it seemed to interest the employer really well, you might want to go ahead and mention that in the email and say something along the lines of, I was glad to explain this previous project to you, and I'd be more than happy to discuss it further or to help you with this sort of project if I am hired in this position. And again, this also adds a personal touch when you mention personal things like that. And you can also bring up I really liked how we discussed the company's future goals and mission, and I feel like I well align with these exact goals by my own personal attributes and abilities. So again, just trying to make it as personal as possible, so that that's just one more thing that they can connect you with the interview from. You also want to make sure you send your thank you within the first 24 hours following the interview. And this is important because they could be interviewing multiple people and quite a few different people as well. So you really want to get that thank you out there, and it could make you stand out from the other interviewees. Now, sometimes when you interview, you might not get the job, or you might get rejected from the position. And the first thing to tell yourself is to not be discouraged or distressed about it, and that this is a learning moment and you are now better prepared for future interviews. But here are some possible reasons for rejection. It could have been that you were unable to express yourself clearly, that you displayed poor communication skills, poor personal appearance, lack of enthusiasm, which can often be seen by a failure to ask questions at the end or throughout the interview, excessive interest in salary, benefits, and vacation, lack of courtesy, maturity, or tact, lack of knowledge about the organization, lack of confidence or overconfidence, and evasiveness. So evasiveness could be where you're avoiding answering difficult questions, such as, tell me about a time when you had to make a difficult decision, or tell me about a time when you had a difficult situation with a coworker. Interviewers and employers want to hear what you have to say with these questions, so you don't want to evade them just because it might be uncomfortable. You just want to be as honest, humble, and positive about it as possible, but don't evade it. And again, as with everything, practice makes perfect with interviewing, and there's a lot of different ways that you can practice before your actual interview. One way you can do it is by accessing our Interview Stream virtual interview program, which is just on our website. And this is something you can do multiple times. There's no limit on how many Interview Stream interviews you can do. So definitely take advantage of that. Or you could schedule a mock interview with a career development specialist through Zoom in our office. Or you can even answer interview questions asked by friends or family members. So you can take questions that you learned from this video or questions that you've learned from Googling, and just have your parents or your friends ask you and just start coming up with answers and how you would react to these type of questions. You also want to start introducing yourself to strangers. And I know this might sound strange, but it will help you build confidence in conversation flow, because essentially your interviewers are going to be strangers at the beginning, but hopefully at the end of the interview you would feel a little bit more comfortable with them. But a good way to practice ice breaking is just by introducing yourself to that stranger you're stuck in the elevator with, or that you're going up the stairs with, and just start jumping into conversations that way. And again, good luck with your upcoming interview. And if you would like some preparation or some interview tips, tricks, and hints, definitely contact our office at the SIU Career Development Center. We'd be happy to help you prepare and prep for your upcoming interview. And we hope you join us for our Future Success Program videos. Thanks, and have a great day.